I need to be completely honest before we even get into this one. I'm not a car guy. To me, a car is just a metal box that gets you from point A to point B. I don't know what a dual overhead cam is. I couldn't point to a carburetor if my life depended on it. And if my dash light board lights up, my solution is usually just to turn the radio up louder so I don't hear the engine making weird noises. If you'd asked me back in the PlayStation era what my favourite racing game was, I wouldn't have said Need for Speed or Ridge Racer. I would have said Lego Racers. That was exactly my speed. I liked snapping plastic blocks together to build a weird, colourful go-kart. I didn't care about tyre pressure or aerodynamics. I just wanted to throw a cannonball at Captain Redbeard and cross the finish line. That was my entire relationship with the racing genre. Keep it simple, keep it arcadey, and let me bounce off the walls without any consequences. So, standing at the starting line of Index Entry 74 is a bit intimidating. We aren't just looking at another arcade racer, we are looking at the giant. The game that literally invented the console driving simulator. It's been nearly 30 years since I even touched this disc, and my only real memory of it is playing split screen at a friend's house, picking a fast car I couldn't pronounce and immediately driving into a barrier. Now I have to actually sit down and play it properly. I have to engage with the mechanics, the tuning and the dreaded simulation mode. Going from building Lego cars to trying to shave 0.2 of a second off a lap time in a heavily modified Japanese commuter car is a massive leap. I'm stepping into this completely blind, with zero mechanical knowledge and a heavy foot on the accelerator. Let's see if a guy who just wants to go from A to B can actually figure out how to navigate the most respected driving simulator of the 32-bit era, or if I'm just going to spend the next few hours spinning out into the grass. Welcome to the PSX Index, I'm Parasine, and this is the show where I play and document all 1278 PS1 games released across Northern America, and this episode is Index Entry 74. It hit the shelves in May of 1998, and it completely changed the landscape of the PlayStation overnight. Gran Turismo wasn't just a hit, it was an absolute juggernaut. It went on to become the highest selling game on the entire console, moving almost 11 million copies. The hype around this thing was unreal. It took a team of developers 5 years to build, which was practically unheard of back then. They mapped out the real world physics, secured actual licensing from major car manufacturers, and essentially created the genre from scratch. Before this, racing games on consoles were mostly about drifting around colourful tracks while the techno soundtrack blasted in your ears. Gran Turismo threw all that out of the window. It demanded respect, it wanted you to know that cars have weight, tyres lose grip, and if you take a corner at 100 miles an hour, you are going to end up in a wall. Documenting this game feels a bit like trying to review a textbook when you haven't taken the class. Because it's a sports title and a simulation at that, the general gaming audience usually only looks forward. People are searching for the newest graphics and the latest car models, so going backwards to look at the 1998 polygon physics of the Mazda Demio is a strange trip. But you can't document the history of the PlayStation without staring down its biggest success story. I've traded the magic spells and the 100-hour RPG menus from the last few episodes for gear ratios and oil changes. I don't know what half the words on the screen mean yet, but I've got a controller and a lot of patience. Let's get the engine started. If you were a casual gamer in the late 90s, your experience with Gran Turismo probably looked exactly like mine. You went over to a mate's house, they booted up the game, and you immediately bypassed everything on the main menu to click on arcade mode. You grabbed the second controller, picked the shiniest, fastest looking car you could find, and spent the next 20 minutes absolutely destroying it in a 2-player split screen race. That was my entire memory of this game, and honestly, ignorance was bliss. In arcade mode, the game is relatively forgiving. It lets you scrape along the guardrails, slam into your friend's bumper, and still feel like you're generally in control of the vehicle. I remember looking at the screen 30 years ago and thinking it was the most photorealistic thing I'd ever seen. The cars actually reflected light. The replays looked like something you'd see on a sports broadcast on a Sunday afternoon. It was mesmerising, but it was also a complete illusion. Arcade mode is basically a trap. It's the shiny showroom floor meant to distract you from the actual monster lurking on the second menu option. It gives casual players just enough of a taste to think they know exactly what they're doing. You win a couple of races on the bigger tracks and you start thinking, hey, maybe I'm a car guy, maybe I'm a natural at this. You get a false sense of confidence, so you back out of the main menu and you click on the simulation mode, expecting more of the same, just with a career attached. This is exactly what I did this week, and the reality check hit me like a ton of bricks. The split screen fun was over, it was actually time to learn how to drive. Clicking into simulation mode for the first time as a non-car guy is a genuinely disorienting experience. You aren't greeted with a select track screen or a flashy starting line. You are dropped onto a massive screen that looks like a city zone and grid. There are dealerships for Honda, Toyota, Nissan, Chevrolet, and a bunch of others. There's a car wash, there's a tuning shop, there's a garage. It doesn't feel like a video game. It feels like walking into a mechanic's shop, blindfolded, and being asked to rebuild a transmission. I just sat there staring at the menus. In LEGO races, you pick the red block or the blue block. Here, you're looking at spec sheets detailing torque, horsepower, and drivetrain layouts. The game doesn't hold your hand or explain what an FR layout means compared to an FF layout. It just assumes you know, or it assumes you're going to figure it out the hard way. It's incredibly dry and unapologetically dense, and you don't even get to race right away. You think you're just going to hop into a tournament and start earning cash? Absolutely not. You try to enter the Sunday Cup, and the game politely taps you on the shoulder and informs you don't have the proper licensing. That's right, before you can even participate in the lowest tier of racing, you have to go to the game's version of the DMV. It's hilarious when you think about it. You bought a video game to escape reality, and the very first thing it makes you do is take a standardised driving test. Nothing will humble you faster than the Gran Turismo License Centre. I went in thinking it would be a quick tutorial. Just drive around some cones, show the game I know where the gas pedal is. I was so wrong. The B license test is an exercise in absolute precision and pure frustration. The very first test just asks you to drive in a straight line and stop your car inside the designated box area. It sounds simple. I hit the gas, sped down the track, slammed on the brakes exactly when I thought I should, and skidded right out of the other side of the box. Fail. I tried again, braked earlier, stopped 10 feet short of the box. Fail. I spent 20 minutes just trying to stop a car in a straight line. The game forces you to unlearn everything you know about arcade races. You can't just hold the X button down and hope for the best. You have to start feathering the throttle. You have to understand that tyres lock up if you slam the brakes too hard. You have to learn how to take a corner from the outside, hit the apex and accelerate out smoothly. If any part of your tyre touches the grass, you fail instantly and have to start over. It was infuriating, but it was also brilliant. The game is physically retraining your brain. By the time I finally scraped by and got my B licence, my thumb was cramped and I was sweating. But I actually understood the weight of the cars. I wasn't just playing a game anymore, I was operating machinery. I had earned the right to go and buy a car. So you've got your shiny new licence and 10,000 credits in your pocket. You head over to the dealership, thinking you're going to walk out with a Viper or a Skyline. You open the menu, and the reality of the simulation hits you again. A new sports car costs 50,000 credits, and you're completely broke. You aren't buying a supercar. You are pointed directly towards the used car lot. This is my favourite part of the game because of how absurd it is. You are starting this grand, epic racing career, and your first major decision is figuring out whether you want to buy a 1993 Honda Civic or a 5-year-old Mazda Demio. You're looking at the mileage of these digital cars, trying to find the one that fits your measly budget. It's a game about driving your mum's commuter to the grocery store, but fast. I ended up buying a used Honda Prelude. It was slow, it was heavy, and it sounded like a vacuum cleaner, but it was mine. I took my remaining few hundred credits, gave it a wash at the virtual car wash, and finally drove it to the starting line of the Sunday Cup. There is something incredibly funny about lining up on a professional racetrack in a car that looks like it belongs in the parking lot of a local supermarket, but that's the magic of the progression system. You start at the absolute bottom of the barrel. Getting out on the track in a career race is where the physics engine really starts to mess with you. In the first actual race, I approached a hairpin turn, kept my finger mashed on the accelerator, and turned the D-pad hard to the left. In any other game, I would have power slid around the corner and kept going. In Gran Turismo, my heavy Honda Prelude just ploughed straight forward, completely ignoring my steering, and buried its nose deep into the dirt wall. This is where I learned what understeer actually means. The game punishes you for driving like an idiot. If you go into a corner too fast, the front tyres lose grip and you just slide straight. You have to brake in a straight line before the turn, let the car balance out, turn the wheel, and only hit the gas when you see the exit. It sounds like basic driving advice, but when you're used to throwing turtle shells at people in other games, it requires a complete mental reset. It took me a solid hour of grinding the Sunday Cup just to stop driving into the grass. You start to feel the difference between front wheel drive and rear wheel drive. You start to notice when your tyres are losing traction. It's incredibly demanding, and for a while, I honestly wasn't sure if I was having fun or if I was just performing chores. But slowly, the lap time started coming down. I wasn't bouncing off walls anymore, I was actually driving. Once you start winning a few races and scraping together some prize money, you discover the real hook of Gran Turismo, the tuning shop. This is where the game basically reveals it's an RPG disguised as a racing simulator. I didn't understand the mechanical difference between a racing exhaust and a sports muffler. I didn't know how adjusting the gear ratios would affect my top speed, but I did know that when I bought a part, the little horsepower bar on the screen went up. It's an incredibly addictive loop. You run a 3-lap race, win 1,500 credits, and immediately drive straight to the tuning shop to blow it all on a Stage 1 turbo kit. You bolt it onto your beta Honda Prelude, take it back to the exact same track, and suddenly, you're shaving 3 seconds off your lap time. You fly past the AI cars that were beating you 10 minutes ago. I fell right into the trap. I wasn't tuning the car because I loved the mechanics. I was doing it because I love seeing the numbers go up. I was buying racing chips, weight reduction kits, and suspension upgrades entirely blind, just trusting that the game was making my car better. Watching a cheap, second-hand commuter car slowly transform into a ridiculously fast, uncontrollable rocket ship is the best part of the simulation. You get so attached to this piece of junk because you've basically rebuilt it from the ground up, one race at a time. I have to take a second to talk about the graphics, because in 1998, the game was doing things that didn't seem possible on the hardware. After you finish a race, the game automatically kicks into replay mode, and it uses these sweeping cinematic camera angles that mimic real-life television broadcasts. I usually skip replays in modern games, but in Gran Turismo, I found myself putting the controller down and just watching them. The cars actually looked like cars. They leaned heavily to the side when you took a sharp corner. You could see the suspension working as you hit the rumble strips. Even the reflections on the windows looked incredible for the time. It was the ultimate reward for struggling through the difficult physics. Watching yourself perfectly nail a corner from a helicopter camera angle made all the frustration of the license centre worth it. It made you feel like a professional driver. Even if you were just watching a replay of a severely tuned Honda Prelude fighting for 3rd place in a beginner tournament, it pushed the PlayStation to its absolute breaking point, and it's easy to see why it blew people's minds back in the day. So, can a guy who isn't into cars, who treats driving like a chore, and grew up preferring Lego races actually enjoy the ultimate driving simulator 30 years later? Surprisingly, yes. Gran Turismo is dry, it's difficult, and it demands an annoying amount of patience. The menus look like spreadsheets, and the license tests are bordering on psychological torture, but the progression loop is flawless. The journey from buying a cheap used car to slowly upgrading it into a track-destroying monster is incredibly satisfying. I still don't care about cars in real life, and I still don't really know what a carburetor does, but I finally understand why millions of people lost their minds over this game. It wasn't just about going fast, it was about earning the right to go fast. It's a brilliant piece of design that deserves its spot at the top of the sales charts. 74 games down, 1,204 games to go. Next time on the PSX Index, we are putting the brakes on the simulators and stepping far, far away from the realism. We're trading the pristine racetracks and shiny car washes for the grimy, blood-stained floors of a massive intergalactic meat processing plant. Get ready for Index Entry 75. Oddworld, Abe's Odyssey. We are swapping out our driving licenses for a dedicated fart button, learning a completely bizarre language, and trying to save a bunch of alien floor waxes from being turned into novelty snacks. It's weird, it's punishing, and it's a total system shock after all this sterile racing. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss me getting turned into a novelty meat snack for the next week. I'll see you on the factory floor.